Yeah, so there's lots of Joe Schmidt in the newspapers today. Here's a clip from the interview, which we're going to play out a little bit later on. Going to bring you the full piece after 9 o'clock. Have a look. Your World Cup diary starts for the World Cup in 2019, with the preparations for Japan 2019 started with individual player reviews a few weeks after our exit from the 2015 Rugby World Cup.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, and it seems like we've all got to this point where this is our white whale, and the white whale ends up killing Captain Ahab.
Yeah, I think the white whale was the All Blacks, though, and we died many deaths. But once we got the white whale, we got the white whale again. And I do think that, you know, those glass ceilings, that the more you focus on the glass ceiling, I think you add layers to it, and then it's harder to break. I think you make it bigger than it really necessarily has to be. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, let's not make it so big, let's not focus so much on it that it starts to actually
Inhibit us.
Become something that it's not.
And that seems to have happened here.
I feel a little bit like that, and I feel that I didn't help because I helped make it something really, really big for us.
And was that internally with the players and the coaching?
Yeah, and even internally myself, you know, it was something huge for me, and inevitably, you know, I mentioned Daniel Goldman in the book. Your anxiety, your thoughts, your attitude, it does ripple through an environment if you're at the top of the environment. So I do think that I could have managed that better.
How?
Well,
what would you do now?
I would not talk about it that far in advance. I was always thinking about things in advance anyway. I was always planning in advance. I didn't have to actually, you know, talk about it with the players. And we actually intentionally talked about periodisation, about tapering, about recovery and peaking. You know, we'd never talked in those terms before. It was all about, okay, do your recovery for sure, but then let's make sure we get the upswing at the end of the week, not the end of the next year.
Yeah, that's interesting stuff.
That is interesting. That is why things went wrong in Japan, was that they focused too much on Japan, and that whole few weeks that there wasn't enough of a focus in the thing that he believes in the most, which is the process. Is that what he's saying here? Like, is that the context of the clip?
Well, the context of the clip is that he went away from trying to win in the Six Nations to building towards and to telling the players that we're building for the World Cup through the Six Nations as opposed to trying to win. And that means that suddenly people are slightly long-term focus, stuff gets missed in the short term. That's kind of the thrust of the argument. And look, that means that there was nothing they could have done then from the start of the World Cup. You know, it was a done deal that because they'd been thinking about it for so long that they couldn't fix it by the time they got there, which I don't think they, you know, I think that they feel like if a few things had gone their way in the World Cup, they could have ended up playing South Africa in the quarterfinals, and who knows what happens in that game. But at the same time, I totally understand this has become the most impossible. It's like Mayo winning All Ireland. It becomes far more difficult for Mayo to win All Ireland with each passing year, irrespective of how talented they are, because psychological trauma of never getting past this thing becomes something that you talk about and obsess about. Like, all our conversations are about trying to get through quarterfinals of the World Cup.
Yeah,
we never ever talk about winning a semi-final.
That is something in fairness that he has spoken about before. I just wonder, like, this is clearly the difference between Joe Schmidt and the rest of us, or somebody who works in high performance and the rest of us, that when I hear we didn't focus enough on the Six Nations, or we didn't stick to actually focusing on what the next competition was up, and that ended up railroading our entire World Cup preparations, I kind of think that's a bit dramatic. I'm thinking there has to be some other reason here, other than just a little drop-off in your focus. But maybe, as I said, it's the difference between us, that actually that little drop-off to someone like Joe Schmidt is this seismic thing that changes everything, that is a car crash, that does result in a terrible performance against Japan and the hammering at the hands of the All Blacks. It just seems that when I hear that, it's like, God, that is something that, if you did that, if you went back and started this year again, what would you change? And it sounds to me like we'd focus more on the Six Nations and we'd focus less on the World Cup. Would that help us beat Japan? Would that help us not get hammered by the All Blacks in a World Cup quarter-final?
Did the players look inhibited by the occasion, and did they make mistakes doing things that they normally are capable of doing? Yeah, they did. Like, now that doesn't really excuse what happens in the Japan game, but certainly it looked like the magnitude of the occasion in the quarter-final was something that the players didn't deal with the way they normally would, potentially because all we ever talk about is the World Cup quarter-final.
Well, there's no question that the magnitude of the World Cup quarter-final was perhaps a little bit overwhelming. I think there were other factors there as well. There's a good chance any Ireland team going into that World Cup quarter-final would have got beaten as well by an All Blacks team. It's just the manner of that performance. They're just.
I don't know. I mean, certainly they would have had a game.
Like, it would have been nice to have a game. But that's the point. Is like I just can't understand why having your eye just on the World Cup means that you bomb in a World Cup quarter final. I just think there has to be other factors here. And
look, I know he's not saying that's the only factor. It's like he says there's literally hundreds of factors, and so you constantly try and come up with a narrative, and that's his current narrative. That might change in a while. Like, sorry, I don't want to frame this as the only thing that they did that was wrong. There's loads of other stuff. Like, we talk about selection. Do you second guess the selection? Do you put Sexton in? He's like, well, probably not now, even though I actually, would have been concerned at the time about potential injury down the road. So we don't know if he's fit for that game. Does he actually injure himself and miss the quarterfinal? And everybody's going, well, why play him against Japan? We would have beat Japan anyway.
In fairness, and that was a conversation we were having before with the World Cup, saying which games are you not going to play Sexton for? Nobody expected him to play right the way through to New Zealand, so I think that is fair enough to think which games you weren't going to play him for, especially the way the games were staggered and there was a quick enough turnaround to the one after that. But yeah, you're right. There was a multitude of factors here. It'll be interesting to see, even in a year or two, what Joe Schmidt has to say if he does any more interviews, how his thought process about what happened at this year's World Cup has changed, or what other things are on this kind of a wedding cake of factors that allowed Ireland to fail at the World Cup.
A wedding cake of factors indeed. Irish Independent. Flynn hits back to reject claim GPA seeking pay for play. This is Paul Flynn yesterday speaking at the announcement that UPMC are going to be the GPA health partner. That's a picture of Conor Harahan celebrating after scoring for Villa last night in their 2-0 win against Newcastle. And Pep praises Arteta influence as Arsenal talk grows louder. This is amazing stuff from Pep. Of course he will be a manager sooner or later. We're going to finish the season in the future. I don't know what will happen. He was an incredible player. Normally, holding midfielders have a vision on the pitch. You go to school, you read it, you understand it completely. He was so clever in that. More than that, he is an incredible human being and has a work ethic. He's already a manager. He behaves as a manager, and that's why we are so satisfied to have him here. Pep Guardiola issues best sales pitch ever for one of his staff. Like, if you're Arsenal reading this, you're going, look at him quick! Pep says he's the second coming of Pep.
Which almost allows me to believe that Pep Guardiola is actually saying, please come and get him. Look at this shiny new thing here, Arsenal.
There's a bit of that, isn't there?
Definitely come and wait for the net to actually fall down above your head, Arsenal executives, while you try and capture this guy. I don't know, it's clearly something that's developed between them over the last couple of years. A huge draw between them. Pep Guardiola has huge respect for him. Mikel Arteta has huge respect for him. It's a match made in heaven, it seems, on the sideline. And if you're Mikel Arteta, you've got to park that ambition for a while. You've got to say to yourself, I don't want to be number one for a little while longer here. This is a mission that the two of us are on here. We are best buds, hailing from Spain, going to conquer Europe on the Middle Eastern money via Manchester City here. That is the end of this relationship for them. He has to stay put.
Win a Champions League and then go.
Yeah. This thing has, the Pep Guardiola project always reaches a finality at his club. It probably won't end in them being sacked. It will end in Pep Guardiola getting sick of things and leaving Manchester City.
And who might get the gig then?
Well, there you go. And that's when Mikel Arteta leaves the side of Pep Guardiola and either steps up to be manager of Manchester City or takes on another lucrative role. His stock is sky high. This is brilliant stuff for Mikel Arteta, and it just gets better the more he kind of adds another layer of riddle to the esteem of himself.
So what if you're
Arteta, I'm staying.
You're his agent, and you're saying, what are you saying? If you're his agent, you're getting a cut of his next deal, so you're probably saying, take the money now, but there might be no more money, though. What if it goes pear-shaped at City for Pep? He burns everybody out. Arteta becomes part of that core that burned the team out.
And also, if that does
fails
happen,
to win a Champions League.
But just to entertain that notion for a moment, what then happens then is that Mikel Arteta probably gets less chances as a manager than he would do now.
Yeah.
Because Pep Guardiola might take it like that. That's the sound of a guy who might actually take Arteta back were he to fail somewhere. But I think once you go to the management level, you're not going to go back to assistant level. I think once you make that departure, you're never going to come back. But like while you're young, you kind of want to make a move like that. You want to give yourself that safety net. You want to give yourself a few more chances. Mikel Arteta, he's going to make it as a manager somewhere. It seems the way Pep speaks about him. It just doesn't make any sense to me that he'd speak about him and be wrong.
He's like Hansel from Zoolander. He's so hot right now. He needs to take the money. Take the money.
Well, Arsenal should obviously be doing everything in their power to get a conversation.
They had him. He went off and thought that the deal had been done, and then they went and got distracted. So look, I don't know. Would you be happy with Arteta?
You would, yeah. I would be happy with Mikel Arteta.
Why?
I presume
what do you know about him as a manager, though?
Pep Guardiola's just given him a great reference.
Maybe he wants rid of him.
I'm a reference guy rather than a CV guy.
Right.
It's, I will, if I'm looking at your CV, I'll call the guy at the bottom, and if that guy's Pep Guardiola and he's saying something like that, you're hired. That's all I'm saying about that. Like, if you're comparing him to Allegri, then it's going to be...
Brendan Rodgers? Should I just go and get Brendan Rodgers? Rodgers would take the gig. It's a bigger gig, ultimately.
I don't think he would.
Well, no.
I don't think Brendan Rodgers would go to Arsenal at this point.
No.
This is a lovely little string to his bow at the end of the season. Brendan Rodgers qualified Leicester for the Champions League. It wasn't in the fluky Claudio Ranieri way, or so he will say. This was in the methodical Brendan Rodgers way, and we managed to get back into the Champions League. Yeah. So I think he'll be fine waiting for that for a while. It's just if Mauricio Pochettino's in the mix. I just don't believe that Poch is going to walk back into a Premier League club willy-nilly at the moment, and going to Arsenal at that is a definition of something that Mauricio Pochettino perhaps wouldn't do. It is Arsenal on the back page of the Irish Daily Star this morning. Oba and out. Arsenal risking losing their players Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang and Alexandre Lacazette next summer. The Gunners' crisis deepens as Stargio at risk of leaving, with a picture of Unai Emery in the middle there. Lacazette desperate to play in the Champions League as his 30-year-old fan favourite and current captain Aubameyang. Like, there's a situation here where the goings got tough at Arsenal, and Lacazette and Aubameyang's agents are like, we want to get out of here. And I don't have a whole pile of respect for that.
Fair enough, because you're a fan and they're supposed to stick around and try and dig the team out of it.
For a little while at least.
Oh, well, I mean, they're going to stay until the end of the season, so they'll do their best. And they'll try and score as many goals as they can between now and then, because the more goals they score, the better their performance, the more likely they're going to get a transfer to a good team as opposed to a mediocre team, the more money they're going to make. So it makes sense for that. Like, maybe that's their motivation, and a good manager's going to come in and say, look, I know you're leaving at the end of the season, but you knuckle down, give me loads of goals, and you'll be rich.
I just think there has to be some sort of element where Aubameyang and Lacazette are like, let's actually try and help our football team out of this, rather than just the self-praise sort of element to all of that. Like Aubameyang, I don't think his contract is up until 2021, so he might have another season after this. He's in his 30s now, getting on a little bit, perhaps only has one more move left in him. So I can see the incentive there to bang in a load of goals and get that next move, because it will be his last move to a big club. It's just so typical here, where there's all these different factions kind of thrown in the towel a little bit. Like Lacazette's celebration at the weekend was obviously embarrassment, because Arsenal were in such a terrible position. And
6 games in a row that they haven't won. First time in 20 years for Arsenal that's happened.
It's a shocking record.
Well, hang on. If they're not allowed to leave, then Sir Chip shouldn't be allowed to walk away either, should he?
Well,
he should dig in.
Sir Chips has
dirty
done
for a
his
change.
time. You know, he was there during the Arsene Wenger era. He has proven himself to be a stalwart of the club, Sir Chips.
The Irish Examiner, their front cover is Austin Gleeson. Everything I was doing, I just felt it wasn't right. Very introspective from the Waterford Hurlers at the moment. There's been a few changes made by the new manager. A few stalwarts have been dropped from the panel, so it'll be interesting to see how they come back this year. Stephen Kenny can heal Irish football self-esteem issues is a piece from Derek Collin, which is, I guess, one of those questions that I hope he can. I hope that he's given the opportunity to heal our self-esteem issues, because that seems to be fairly rife in Irish football. Don't have the players, can't do it. Why are we trying to pass the ball?
Yeah, there's a moment like last week, improve or diminish self-esteem, the performance against Denmark.
Well, we tried. Better to be trying.
I think it's a step forward. We kind of realised that actually we can look good on a football pitch.
Well, we can
We don't need to
make a bit of an effort.
don't need to have our self-confidence through the floor to actually exist in this world.
Stick Jack Grealish in that team last week, and we qualified for the Euros.
You were lucky as a Villa fan, you get to support Jack Grealish.
We know.
Back page of the Mirror is sign up or lose out, Ericsson. Now Jose confronts Spurs ace. So this is an interesting one that there's been some sort of comparisons here between how Jose is speaking to Ericsson and how he's spoken to Dele Alli. Jose walks in last week and says, are you Dele Alli or are you Dele Alli's brother? And Ali came out and was like, I really appreciated that honesty. Interesting to see how Christian Eriksen might think when things start coming out publicly about whether or not Christian Eriksen wants to stay, because it was on Sky Sports a few weeks ago where Jose was basically saying that a player like Christian Eriksen needs to be sold. That Tottenham need to get rid of him. That it's similar to the situation where Arjen Robben wanted to leave Chelsea and that they just had to cut loose, no hard feelings. And it seems that it's just kind of hurting towards an inevitability here where Jose Mourinho is going to sell Christian Eriksen. And
At Christmas.
it could be at Christmas, could be next year. So
Is he not out of contract at the end of the season?
Eriksen, well, obviously he'd go for free. Eriksen had length, so if you're talking about selling the player, it's obviously going to be January. So the line here from Matthew Dunn, Eriksen had lengthy talks with the new Spurs boss over the weekend. And Jose Mourinho is obviously out of contract at the end of the season, Eriksen. He remains a full part of the first team squad. He may find game time to come by, that is according to Jose. So it's the second time in a week that Mourinho has dealt with a player, as I mentioned, Dele Alli already. So
what did he say? Do we know what the upshot is? He may find game time hard to come by, or?
Yeah, he says, obviously I'm not going to tell you our conversation. Only me and him, we know about what we spoke about. But my decisions about starting him or not starting, selecting or not selecting will be based on a perspective of the future. I cannot hide that. We have a present, and in football we have to focus on the present. In this case, the game against Olympiacos, but it's a club where you have to think about the future. It's quite cryptic from Jose. Is he leaving? Is he staying? Let's talk about the commitment for the club and for his colleagues and for the project. These important decisions, obviously, they have an influence on my decisions. As a head coach, it all kind of seems that he's skirting away from the issue and saying that Christian Eriksen is probably going to be out of the club eventually. But he does say that Christian is a proper guy, loves the club, loves his colleagues, amazing colleague in the dressing room, so it doesn't matter what. He's one of us until the last day, which...
Try and swap him for Gareth Bale?
Oh. Plus, how much money do you have to throw into the mix for Gareth Bale plus Christian Eriksen?
I don't know. I mean, Real Madrid.
An ability
really
to pay his wages.
Yeah, but I mean, they obviously have. They've got a best stadium in the world, says Jose Mourinho. So the Irish Times for you this morning, Mourinho prepares for opening night against Olympiacos, and that's himself and Harry Kane on the training ground. And then Aguero likely to miss Manchester Derby, says Pep Guardiola ahead of the game against Shakhtar Donetsk. So obviously he limped off in the game against Chelsea, and looks like he's going to miss the game against Manchester United. And then they also have a picture of Conor Hourihane celebrating with Jack Grealish following him as Villa beat Newcastle 2-0. Hourihane scored one and made the other in a 4-minute spell, both from set pieces, both absolutely deadly left foot. And Ozzie Gleeson saying that Liam Cahill coming in and getting rid of Noel Connors and Maurice Shanahan was a wake-up call for everybody else in that panel. And Paul Flynn dismisses talk of move towards professionalism. We haven't spoken about this, but does anybody still think that the GPA are in favour of full-blown professionalism?
Well, Paul Flynn says that they're not. You have to take him at his word that the idea of professionalism, and that's what they're trying to do in an underhanded way, is not the case whatsoever.
But that idea seems to have been retired around 2004, 2005. Like, it was the first 12 months, and then after that it was like, maybe professionalism isn't going to work.
What's the benefit, like I would often be interested, what is the benefit of trying to hide a principle? Like, what is the benefit to the GPA in wanting professionalism and not telling anybody about it?
Well, one, you have a Trojan horse of like, oh, you deliver it by stealth under the cover of darkness. But like,
I would always say with these sort of things that...
Wouldn't it leak out?
Yeah, but like I would always think that you kind of overshoot the runway when it comes to GAA policy, that you go for a complete overhaul and say a championship structure change, and then you might get the Super 8s. You go for complete professionalism and you get your semi-professionalism rather than the Trojan horse method. But maybe not. So I just, obviously there's been a lot of stuff written about the GPA in recent weeks. Paul Flynn says there's been a lot of misinformation out there that there's some of the stuff that's been written about them and their philosophy is actually just false. So he's been up against it, but he's come out fighting, and he hasn't kind of shied away from the spotlight in recent weeks for sure, which is kind of good to see. Back page of the London Times this morning is this story about UK athletics. It's in a crisis as new chief is axed. So this is something that you might have seen over the past couple of days. This is regarding its incoming chief executive, Zara Hyde-Peters, who'd been due to begin her 200 grand a year role next week, until the newspaper here, the Times, revealed that her husband was allowed to continue managing teams featuring teenage athletes at their local club, despite having been banned from teaching over an inappropriate relationship with a 15-year-old girl. So UK Athletics, they initially sought to persist with Hyde-Peters' appointment before officials at UK Sport, which of course funds UK Athletics, but they stressed the seriousness of the situation. Then yesterday morning, UK Athletics announced that Hyde-Peters would not take up her new role with UK Sport, and they were saying that the chairman, Chris Clark, who's the chairman of UK Athletics, his handling of the scandal as well is come into question. So Hyde-Peters resigned last night from the board of the organising committee from the 2022 Commonwealth Games to be held in Birmingham. So it seems that it's been a situation where she's going to resign from a number of positions.
All right, the Guardian are announcing on the back page that Jonathan Liu has joined from the London Independent. So if you're a fan of Johnny Liu's writing, and you should be really, because it's brilliant, then you're going to be reading the Guardian online as opposed to the Independent online. WADA pushes for Russia to face 4-year ban is the other story there. Russia faces an unprecedented 4-year ban from global sport after the World Anti-Doping Agency investigators found a number of positive drug tests were deleted from a database extracted from a Moscow laboratory in January. That's January this year. This is even after all the stuff that has come out post-Icarus. The Russians still at it turns out. Now look, before everybody rushes to say, yeah, what about the Americans and the Brits? They're also, no doubt, at various different things. However, they have yet to be discovered on the type of scale that Russia are. So this is not to suggest that this will cure all of the world's doping ills, but, you know, at the same time, you still have to deal with the ones you find. The recommendations, if approved by WADA's executive committee in Paris on the 9th of December, would result in Russian athletes and teams barred from football's European Championships and the Tokyo Olympics next year, but also from a host of other sporting competitions. So the death penalty for Russian sports on a global scale.
I really enjoyed watching them at the World Cup last year. What a shame it would be to kick them out of the Euros.
They had to wait, obviously, until after the World Cup was held in Russia. Now it's like, I'm sure, you know.
No, because they were squeaky clean for the entire period of that hosting.
Exactly.
These things only come up when you're at the periphery of the sporting landscape, and now that the World Cup is done.
Now, obviously, they were banned from the Winter Olympics, right? Mm-hmm. Russia was banned from the Winter Olympics, but under the flag of Olympic athlete from Russia, they sent 168 athletes.
Yeah. They were quite successful, actually. They were the team I was cheering for most.
Yeah, it's like, obviously they're going to be able to do that with the football team, non-Russian football team, who dress in the Russian colours and speak Russian and live in Russia.
It's Guy Incognito from The Simpsons. That's what the Olympic athletes from Russia was. Back page of The Sun this morning is United clean-up. Owners of Hoover a £70 million a year deal. So Manchester United closing in on a world record shirt sponsorship deal with a Chinese company, which of course includes the brand Hoover. This is the Hire group. So they want to replace Chevrolet's £64 million a year tie-up and remain a huge commercial draw despite the recent struggles under Solskjaer. So Hire looks to be the ones that will kind of take the front of the jersey. It's not something
Hoover.
that Hoover, but Hire is the name of the company. We don't really pay attention to shirt sponsors anymore.
Because there's so telephone book numbers, because, well, I don't know, when Chevrolet didn't work, wasn't that the first crack in the veneer at Manchester United? They pulled out? Isn't that what we have at the minute?
Yeah, but that's why they've gone in to get Hoover, obviously, that Chevrolet aren't going to renew their sponsorship. But the thing is that they're going to up their money from Chevrolet. So perhaps they just got a better offer.
Are they really? But
it's gone from £64 million to £70 million.
Well, sorry, that's what's been briefed to the Sun. That's what, the business people at Manchester United are telling the journalists. That's interesting, isn't it?
The back page of the Sun as well also has history joys. Mourinho's Champions League rally cry for Spurs against Olympiacos tonight.
The Daily Mail back page. Forgive them. Joe Schmidt hopes Paddy Jackson and Stuart Olding will be forgiven at some stage following their exodus in the wake of the Belfast rape trial last year. Being found not guilty doesn't necessarily, in some people's eyes, excuse behaviour. That's a difficult thing to overcome. You would hope that we have a system where people are punished for crime and not doing a crime, and you hope that at some stage forgiveness will be part of that. When you talk about Rory Best, I was worried because of the hashtag not my captain, the way he was isolated. What I tried to do was not allow him to be completely isolated. I could see how tough it was for him. He also says he pleaded with Simon Zebo to stay. You know, these are bits from an interview that he's done with BBC. Where's the actual? If you were to interview Simon, he would tell you about me travelling to Munster, pleading with him to stay in the country. He was a guy we wanted to keep investing in. He was really important to us. It's not like that relationship isn't positive. I've texted him and kept in mind how he's doing at Racing. Does he fit? You don't want all people the same. We have very different personalities in the team. So there you go.
The Herald this morning leads with a story about Eoin Kelleher. Perhaps he's going to make a move. Liverpool willing to loan their young goalkeeper. So Liverpool prepared to allow Irish under-21 goalkeeper Eoin Kelleher to go out on loan in the new year, provided he is guaranteed game time. Preston are reportedly interested in the 21-year-old. He is going to be needed, though, at the moment, because there is going to be a bit of chaos with fixtures where Jurgen Klopp is over in the Middle East at the Club World Cup. Liverpool are going to be at home with their under-23s boss, competing in the Carabao Cup, and Eoin Kelleher, you'd imagine, will be playing in those games. Also in the Herald, you've got your continuation of the top 50 dubs.
Okay, let's go. Come on, what have you got for us?
Coleman Goggins at number 40, Paul Griffin at number 39, David Byrne at 38, Owen Merchant at 37, Desi Farrell at 36.
Desi Farrell at 36?
Kevin Nolan at 35.
Was that because of the millennium?
Of the millennium, yeah.
I suppose Desi was also big in the 90s.
Yeah, dropped from the squad in 2004, playing no part as the wheels came off the wagon against Westmeath.
Fair enough. The 90s were definitely his best decade.
Oh, you thought he should be higher?
In terms of, oh yeah.
Yeah, he was a superb footballer. Kevin Nolan, 35, Owen O'Gara, 34, Ray Cosgrove is 33, Niall Scully, 32, and John Small is 31. There's your continuation of the top 50 dubs.
Right. Have you done your top 50 Kerry players of the millennium yet?
I have not, no. It's too many to choose from.
The year 2000 is such an arbitrary cut-off point, really, when you've lived through that period of time.
Yeah, I guess it is. Especially if you're looking at, like with the Dublin one, it'd be tough enough to choose.
Maurice Fitz doesn't make your list.
He might squeeze in.
Would he?
Yeah.
Did he play in 2000 and 2001?
Yeah, obviously he wasn't as big a part as he was in 1997.
When's the game in Thurles? That's
2001, yeah.
Is it? Okay, so he's still a factor.
Yeah, of course he is, and he would probably be in the top 50. Like it's a thing that we got into when we were doing our team of the decade a couple of weeks ago. It's like, do you appreciate the fact that greatness existed in that time period?
Even though it was past it?
Yeah, or, well, not even necessarily past it, or do you have to look at longevity throughout a decade? Like, this is something that we spoke about when it came to Gooch and Anthony Moyles' team and my team for this decade.
You stuck Gooch in it?
Because, not only because of how he reinvented himself this decade, but also because I felt that we had peak Colm Cooper in 2011. This decade, we got to see some of the best football from Colm Cooper. Now, he didn't have as many good years as he did in the last decade, but does that mean you preclude him from your consideration? Because really, as a top-class corner forward, he only had, 2-3 years max in this decade. So that's the interesting thought.
I don't really remember Kerry that much in 2011. What did they do?
Well, they lost the All-Ireland final to
I know that
Dublin. I thought Gooch was...
Cluxton scores the 45 or whatever it is. Right, so that's the final, but what else did Gooch do?
Gooch was brilliant all throughout. He was fantastic against Mayo earlier on in the championship. For me, it was just, you were kind of coming away from Croke Park that summer thinking, this guy is still the best forward in the country. And Dublin people will say Bernard Brogan was that guy. And he picked up his Footballer of the Year award in 2010, and perhaps they had bigger reason to say that. But then we actually discovered that Bernard Brogan would go on to become the undisputed best forward in the country over the following couple of years, and perhaps Gooch getting overshadowed by Brogan a little bit in 2010, 2011 was actually because the guard had certainly shifted. Now, am I actually trying to consider that Gooch's best year was 2011? Perhaps not. It's hard to actually look past 2009 and a year where Colm Cooper actually won an All-Ireland. But I just still felt that if you put him into any team in 2011, put him into that Dublin team in 2011, like he was still flying it. But also, and I think Anthony made the point as well going through his team, that 2013 was also a huge feather in his cap, the reinvention as a centre forward.
Okay, that's fair enough. The Racing Post, final one for us from now, unless we have the Irish News, I'll tell you about that in a minute. Phoenix Racing Fund was never regulated and is now in liquidation. Amir Abdulaziz Salman's Phoenix Luxembourg Fund, lauded by its founder as the world's first regulated thoroughbred fund, has been placed into voluntary liquidation and never operated as a functioning investment fund at all. Were you at... did you see him buy a horse?
Yeah, I met Abdulaziz a few last year. I think myself and John were down at the Goffs Orby sale and we met him.
Yeah. Well, that...
First time I've seen him since.
Yeah.
Got the Irish news this morning. Hart hopes Donnelly could be back for National Football League. So this is Matty Donnelly there, who is facing 6 months out with an injury. I didn't realise that.
Tore his hamstring off the bone.
Oh.
Yeah. He's saw him at the weekend, just at a conference I was at, and wandering around on crutches with the leg basically. It's not a cast, but like it's plastic on the thigh and plastic on the calf to make sure that the knee and the hamstring doesn't move.
That obviously happened in the club game a few
Like
months
3 or
back.
4 weeks ago.
Jesus.
Recently
If he tore the hamstring off the bone and they're hoping for him to be back, I suppose for the end of the football league, so you're talking the tail end of March.
6 months, I think.
Yeah, that is a tough injury, especially at his stage in his career. He had a good season as well this year.
Great season, yeah. So you really wish him all the best. Hope he gets back with it. So